All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about Splitgate 2's possible future and how I see the future of this game going in one of three ways, essentially. So, and you know what's funny, real quick, just before we really start, is sometimes I get people that come into my comment section, and thanks for the support, by the way. Even if you're bashing me or accusing me of trying to spread hate about this game, even though you only watch 1 or 2 minutes of my video or listen to 1 or 2 minutes of my commentary and then form a conclusion by that, I just want to say thank you for the support, because you leaving comments supports me through the algorithm, as well as this channel, obviously. Yeah, so whether you're bashing me or accusing me of this or that, that's great, because you're still supporting the channel. So just know that before entering another stupid comment in the comment section of accusing me of bashing this game, because every single time I talk about a game that I'm interested in and love, particularly this one, and for those of you guys that have been around long enough, you guys will know how much I love this game. I think the time invested in how much I play it and stream it, etc., really does, show that. And you guys have been taking the content really well, and it's been great from every single aspect. And I also want to say right off the bat that I hope that one day, like I would love for this game to one day, surpass or match what Fortnite has been able to do for its genre, or what COD was able to do for its genre, or what Apex Legends was able to do for its genre, etc., right? I would love for that to happen. And I think because of the people that we have developing this game from a technical standpoint, I think that the game can reach that. I think the game could eventually reach to the point to where it could be of that quality, to where from a quality perspective, it could match that, right? But as we know, it's not always about quality, right? It's really not always about quality. It's about popularity, because gaming, as you guys know, is a popularity contest as well. So basically at this point right now, let's get a little bit in depth in terms of what I think about Splitgate 2's future, because just like every other game that I've ever covered on this channel, I've always been real, and I'm always going to address both sides of the fence. In other words, I'm not just going to praise the game because it's done well for me content wise, or this and that, or try to kind of put a shroud over the obvious problems that the game has and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to play even Steven and play fair on both sides, right? And as much as I love the game, I will, occasionally talk about the things that this game needs to overcome in order to reach, hopefully, the best potential that it could possibly reach. And after playing the game so much, and after all this time has passed and everything that's been happening with this game, I just wanted to have this occasional discussion about its future. So scenario number one is that this game pretty much manages to obviously squash all the bugs, gets to a point to where the wheels start moving again. The fans that have been asking for certain features to be included in the game end up getting featured. We're talking anything from progression systems, specific type of game modes, etc., and the wheels are turning, right? And the game, it gets to a point to where it gets to a surplus. Now, how big of a surplus that will be, I'm not sure. I can't predict the future, but all I know is because this game doesn't hold you by the hand, right? It's not designed to hold you by the hand. It's one of my favorite things about it, because, back in the day, gamers in multiplayer shooters were never held by the hand, especially to the extent to where they're held now. With a lot of games these days, aim assist is super duper strong, as well as, mechanics in a lot of games being a little bit slower, a little bit easier to get into, blah, blah, blah. You put all these things together, anybody that just has two thumbs can get in there and pretty much guarantee themselves, let's say in any specific game, a 1 KD, right? Or something along that, maybe even more, right? Well, this game doesn't do gamers that favor. This game requires a certain amount of consistency and dedication in order for you to see the results that come to the other side, which is basically what gaming in multiplayer shooters used to be. But right now, it's not as much about that anymore by design, right? Unless you're playing competitively, but hell, even competitively, you can't, deny the fact that a lot of games these days, the aim assist is turned way up the wazoo to where you're looking at the screen and it's like you're watching the same player play, right? So Splitgate 2 doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. It doesn't hold you by the hand. It just requires a certain amount of consistency. It is a game that is easy to get into, but it's hard to master, in my humble opinion. Now, granted, I've been playing first-person shooters for 23 plus years, ever since I was 18 consistently. And then obviously when I was in my late 20s, that's when it just hit a whole other level. And I just been playing, the 90% of the time has been first-person shooters. Now, Now, with that being said, that is part of the hurdle that this game has to kind of surpass, right? Because again, it's not going to hold players by the hand, and a lot of players, because of the fact that there's a skill gap, so to speak, right? That for a lot of players that are not used to, performing well from the get-go, or struggling here and there and stuff like that, it's going to cause them to leave and all that stuff. And again, this is one of my favorite things about the game, because it brings me back to how it, gaming once was, back when it was in its prime as far as multiplayer shooters are concerned, et cetera, right? And of course, if you spend more time doing something, no matter what it is, playing video games, playing basketball, whatever it is, anything, you put in a certain amount of time, consistency into it, you're going to get better. And the thing is, like, anybody that plays this game for a certain amount of time will eventually get better. But the thing is, people are just looking for easy solutions nowadays. And we're talking everything from inside of gaming as well as outside of gaming. Like those ads that you see, hey, lose 30 pounds in 30 days, or something like that. It's like, dude, it doesn't work that way. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, these things are popular for a very specific reason, and gaming has kind of turned itself into that. And this game is not like that in that aspect, which is, again, one of my favorite things about it. And I'm glad that the devs made the decision, or the CEOs and the people that are in charge made the decision for this game to be, kind of a callback to your classic arena shooter, modernized, obviously, but your classic arena shooter that has also been inspired by other games like Titanfall 2, like Halo, and a few others, right? So that's one of the reasons why I love the game as much as I do, and obviously it's fun to play, et cetera, et cetera. But because of reasons that I just mentioned, I don't know if it will ever get to a certain amount of popularity. Hopefully it gets popular enough to where the CEO is going to be able to pay back his investors. The devs will continue to have a job to work at, and things will continue to progress forward in this game in terms of what this game specifically offers. But with that being said, because of the reasons that I mentioned yet again, I don't know if it's going to appeal to so many people of this particular generation. It may appeal to a smaller percentage, but most of it appeals to the OGs. And unfortunately, a lot of the OGs have left, whether it's because they're at a certain age and they've moved on for gaming, or they just play different games now because they don't have the time to invest anymore, or whatever it is, or because they just, don't play FPS games anymore for whatever reason, whatever it is, that's another thing to take into consideration. So again, as much as I would love to see this game, to reach the heights of a Fortnite or a COD or something like that, I don't see that happening because of where gaming is today and the mindset of most players. I would love to be wrong, and I would love for that to happen, for things to just, spark and hit that next level. But at the same time, again, not because of the game's fault or the dev's fault, but I just don't see that happening because of the way things are today. So with that being said, let's go to scenario number 2. Now, because of the things that have happened, including how this game was promoted, obviously, the game has lost and continues to lose players, right? When you're looking at Steam, we don't know what the console numbers are, but when you look at Steam, et cetera, for whatever reason, in a multitude of reasons, whether it was a Summer's Game Fest presentation, or whether it was the fact that, you've got the skill gap and all that kind of stuff, whether it's the fact that the game has its performance issues, which are getting ironed out and will get ironed out, in which I do have faith that that will happen because we have a good development team that is also transparent. Another thing that I have to mention is that, a lot of the stuff that has happened in terms of what the game is lacking, and as well as how it was initially presented to us, and everything else, the damage has been done, but we're still feeling the repercussions of that damage. In other words, player counts are continuing to drop. Now, obviously, I do believe that the bleeding will stop, and I also believe that we can get some players back eventually at some point. But to what extent? I don't know. So scenario number 2 is that we get to a point to where the bleeding stops and maybe get a small percentage of players back, and that is that. Now, whether or not that's going to be good enough for the game to continue to progress, I don't know. Because again, there's been investors that have been involved in this. You also can't ignore the fact that you've got Splitgate 1 that is still around to this day, and the servers are still up, but obviously that game is not getting developer support because support is being put into Splitgate 2. And so that's something to take into consideration as well. You know what I mean? And of course, scenario number 3, and this is something that I really hope doesn't happen, but it's always on the back of my mind. Just like when I covered X-Defiant, it was always on the back of my mind, even though I wish the absolute best for that game, and I wish we still had it. I wish I could be covering X-Defiant as well as this game as well. But in all honesty, though, worst case scenario, obviously, scenario number 3 is that this game suffers the same fate as X-Defiant. Granted, the reasons are slightly different or whatnot, but ultimately the destination is the same. right? And some of the things, there are some things that are in common as well, because ultimately the world, including the gaming world, runs around money. And when you're talking about a free to play shooter, as well as investors and everything like that, the game absolutely positively needs to have these, this amount of money coming in order to make things happen. Unfortunately, I guess it seems that players playing the game consistently isn't enough to keep it going, if at all. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be that way because it's not a free to play game. I mean, excuse me, because it is a free to play game. So there you have it. So that's scenario number 3. My biggest nightmare as far as this game is concerned is that one day Ian gets on Twitter or on YouTube or both or whatnot and says, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, but this game is sunsetting and such, kind of like what X Defiant did, but having the feeling in terms of how Splitgate 2 would do it, obviously Ian himself would probably get on social media, or, the CEOs or everybody they would just get on there and they'd say, "Hey, this game we're sunsetting this game, and this is how much longer it's going to be live, et cetera, et cetera." And then, and then we get the news, right? So now I hope that doesn't happen. Again, the CEO himself has mentioned that they're in it for the long run. They've been there. They've they're committed to that and all that kind of stuff. And and the difference between this game and X Defiant is that even though Mark Rubin told us that the game was absolutely not dying, it still ended up sunsetting again because ultimately his bosses, Ubisoft, had to make a decision. Now, obviously, Ian is in charge, right? And so is his co-founder as well. Those two guys are in charge. So basically, at this point, it's basically in terms of what they decide, as well as what the finances look like, right? Because they do have investors. They do. From what I've been told, they do have control. Which is why there's a ton of investors instead of like one big ass investor. You know what I mean? They didn't want to relinquish control, which is definitely a good thing. So that's definitely a difference right there, as far as I understand, if that is the case. But at the same time, one thing you have to remember is that it's all about money. And again, in closing here, I also want to say that obviously when you put everything that I just mentioned here together, especially this last part, it just goes to show you that the devs, right, who've gotten these investors and all that kind of stuff, the CEO, the CEOs and whatnot that have gotten all these investors and stuff like that, it just goes to show how much faith they have in the product that they want to deliver to the community, right? As well as some faith in the community as well, because it does take two to tango. It does. Just like content creation, I can make all the content in the world. If it's not being consumed, things are not moving forward. You know what I mean? Every single content creator that you guys watch, they get to where they are because of you. It's not just them. It takes two to tango. It takes the content creator to make the content, and then it takes you, the viewer, to consume that content, right? And if one of those two things are missing, you basically don't go anywhere. And it's kind of the same thing with games. You know what I mean? So and never forget that, right? It's the same thing with games. There has to be money, and at the same time, there has to be the community as well as the devs. And that's one of the reasons why they're being as transparent as they are. And that's why I hope the best for this game. And I'm talking, both in and out of content creation. Obviously, from a content creation standpoint, of course, I want to see the best for this game. I mean, I think the reason for that is pretty damn obvious. But, taking content creation out of the equation, when you look at the amount of time that I've put into this game in terms of, how much time played, because I absolutely love it, I would like to see this game continue to be forward. I would love to come home every night and always have that option to play Splitgate 2, right? Or to stream Splitgate 2. And obviously to continue to make Splitgate 2 videos, because I enjoy doing it. You obviously enjoy consuming it. At least I hope you do. So I would love for this to continue from every single aspect, but we can't forget about the reality of things. And that's kind of one I wanted to touch up today in today's video. So you guys, let me know in the comment section. I really want to know in the comment section in terms of what your guys' thoughts are on the matter. Where do you see this thing going? I know it's a difficult thing to predict, especially since the game has only been out for what, a month and a half or so now, something like that. But a lot has happened in a month and a half, and let's just be real. There's been a lot of players that have left, and even though we don't know specific console numbers, Steam is, a big indicator, and, console. I mean, hopefully console's doing a hell of a lot better than I think it is. But with that being said, we have to also, talk about the concerns for this game as well. in order for there to be some sort of thought, some sort of clarity, communication. And just like the devs communicate with us, this is my way of communicating back to the devs in terms of, my worries and my thoughts overall, and my hopes for this game as well as a community, because I think that's something that really is something we don't want to talk about, obviously, because we don't want to spread any sort of negativity or anything like that. And we certainly don't want to keep other new players from playing this game because they hear, oh my gosh, this game's losing players. But the thing is, it's if you're going to be real, right? Both in and out of content creation, if you're going to be real, it's something that has to be occasionally discussed. So with that being said, those were my thoughts, and I really want to know what your thoughts are down below. And with that being said, guys, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.